Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Wednesday Night Live. I'm Tanja Kraus from Tanja Kraus Horsemanship, and tonight I am joining you with Wednesday Night Live. That is coming to you a little bit late. We're in the middle of, or we've just finished the second day of a 5-day Liberty Clinic that we're conducting, and I was on the way home. We ran a little bit late today, so I was on the way home and I didn't make it in time for the 7 o'clock start. So my apologies for us being a little bit later tonight, but it's good to be here, and I'm looking forward to talking about our topic tonight, which is creating a sense of urgency in our horses, why we need to do it, and how we are going to do it. So I can see that people are starting to tune in. Thank you so much for watching. Welcome. As promised last week, I haven't actually managed to relocate from my office to a studio. I do have all the makings for my studio, but it just hasn't quite come together yet. So I'm hoping that by next Wednesday, we will have the studio underway. But we do have a 5-day Liberty Clinic this week. I get Sunday at home, and then we get Monday, we're starting a 14-day colt starting clinic. So things are a little bit hectic at the moment and a little bit busy, but I'm loving it, and it's so fantastic to have everything happening at the moment. But I'm pretty sure that on Sunday we'll be able to set up the studio, and you won't have to watch me in my office at the moment, which is absolutely, I'm glad you can only see a tiny portion of it because it's absolutely swamped with a lot of stuff. So hi to everyone that's saying hello. Thank you so much for tuning in. And tonight's topic I'm really looking forward to having a chat about. It was a suggested topic to me, so thank you so much, guys, for when you do suggest topics to me. I really enjoy getting topics from the outside because, of course, as I keep saying, this show is for you guys, and I want to answer the questions and talk about the topics that you want to hear me talk about. So, tonight's topic is a sense of urgency and creating that good response in our horses for I guess whether it's stopping or starting or going or moving in a particular direction, having that real sense of urgency in our horses and having our horses to the point where they will respond immediately, so to speak. So the first thing I want to talk about is the what of a sense of urgency. And I just kind of touched on it then. The what is, a horse responding with a sense of, okay, we've got to do it now. It's got to be done immediately. But also the thing that I want to clarify here is that it may be to the horse responding to good and not so good cues. So that's something that I wanted to clarify. Often in training, and certainly when we're educating our horses and we're in the teaching phase or we're in the training phase, we take things nice and slow, and we really educate the horses, and we really explain to them on a nice, quiet, calm, confident level. This is what this cue means. This is what I expect you to do, etc., etc. And in training, as there shouldn't be, or in the teaching phase, as there shouldn't be, there's not really a sense of urgency. And I think it's in the training phase where you would start to develop that sense of urgency. And the reason I say to good and not so good cues is because quite often you might have a sense of urgency, say, for example, in a competition. Say you're doing a dressage test or something like that, and the transition is called for at a particular marker. Well, that would be a sense of urgency because you want the horse to respond immediately at that marker. But it's not a life or death situation. You would be putting on the cues, expecting the horse to respond quite quickly, but you would probably be putting on the cues quite well. So they'd be in your legs would be in the right position, your hands would be in the right position. So I would say that it's a good cue, even though it might be applied in an abrupt way or in a rapid way, expecting the horse to respond. The other scenario is, or the other type of scenario is when you are, hey mum, when you are expecting your horse to respond quite rapidly, and a scenario in which you may be putting on a not so great cue is an urgent situation where, you know, maybe the horse is spooked and you're kind of trying to fix him and you're grabbing him, or maybe the horse hasn't spooked but you've seen something that you need to get away from fairly quickly, or you need to avoid fairly quickly, or you can see another horse coming, or, you know, someone coming or something like that, and you need to act really rapidly. And that might not be the most clear, quiet, well applied cue. You're just going to immediately apply something that tells the horse to move. So the first thing is the sense of urgency can be asked for with a good cue, so you're prepared for it. You're in a situation where you're asking the horse to respond rapidly for a reason, or it could be an unexpected reaction to something that's occurring, so it may not be the best cue on the rider's part. So they're the two different sorts of cues that we're wanting to develop in our horses. The why that comes into it, we've had a couple of situations personally where, you know, we've been out on a trail and you see a snake lying in the middle of the trail, and we've had to just pull the horses. You know, there's no time to prepare. You may be on a loose rein and you've just got to grab all that rein and say to the horse, you need to stop right now, otherwise you're stepping on a snake, and, you know, that could injure you and injure me or injure both of us or whatever. So, you know, sometimes there's a situation happening where you've just got to grab the rein, or you know, maybe something's happening beside you where you need to really apply the leg, or something rapid is happening, and you've got no time to prepare the horse, and you've just got to grab a hold of him and expect him to follow that cue. The other situation where we see it happen on a semi-regular basis is my partner Phil. A lot of you know Phil does roping and ranch roping. So it's not speed roping. It's not where the cow runs out of the chute and you're chasing him and you're at speed, which obviously would be a rapid sense of urgency, and the horse is responding in a sense of urgency in that scenario. But even in ranch roping, where you're trying to be as quiet as you possibly can, and you're trying to get the rope on the cow, and you're sort of letting the cow travel along, or the calf, if it's, you know, with its mum, you're trying to let it travel along and move about, and you're slowly trying to direct it with the rope. Sometimes ranch roping can get a little bit Western. So you might have, you know, you might have a couple of ground crew in there. You might have 3 people on horseback. You've got 1 person on the head. You've got 1 person trying to heel the calf, and maybe the calf jumps up and starts bolting down the arena. Well, I don't know whether you've ever seen it before, but I've certainly been in a situation where, you know, you've got a head rope on a calf. You might have 20 foot of rope between the calf and the horse that's actually holding that head rope. The calf starts running down the arena. The horse goes with the calf, because the whole point, or one of the points of ranch roping, is to be as smooth as you possibly can. So we're not going to jerk the calf off its feet. So that calf and that horse are running down the arena, and you've got a 20-foot rope in between them that's just barreling down the arena. And I've been part of a set of turn back people, or whatever you want to call them, just people that were there to manage the herd. And we've had a calf running to us and a horse, separately with a big rope line attached. You have to get out of the way, and you have to run out of the way really, really quickly. Otherwise, you can imagine what's going to happen if you and someone else on a horse, or even just you and your horse, get taken out by a calf and a rope and another horse. That could end up in a really bad wreck, and it could be dangerous for the person that was roping in the first place, you, your horse, anyone else spectating, perhaps ground crew, anything like that. The other situation that you've got, particularly in a roping situation, is, you know, you've got people on the ground. So you've got someone on the head, someone on the heels of the calf, and then you've got ground crew that are down doctoring the calf. They might be branding it, they might be castrating it, they might be worming it, they might be vaccinating it. There could be any number of things going on. You've got a couple of guys on the ground. Well, if that calf you know, if your rope goes slack and that calf manages to get to its feet, well, now you've got guys on the ground that don't have the protection of a horse. You've got 2 horses in the arena. You've got 2 ropes in the arena. You've got 2 guys on the ground. You've got a calf that's up and jumping around. You might really have to back your horse up really rapidly, or take the horse over there or the calf over there or something like that. You don't have time or the luxury to really gather your horse and say, oh, come on, Nettie, you know, we need to side pass 5 meters. You're going to whack that leg on and you're going to say, hey, we need to get out of this situation right now, because it could literally be a life or death situation if that calf and those ropes are going towards those ground crew and they're not able to get out of the way quick enough. So that's only 2 scenarios, you know, a snake situation or a roping situation. But there's lots of reasons why you may need to apply very rapid, very unclear cues to your horse. You know, the horse might shy and you've got a cliff on one side and a traffic on the other, or maybe you've got an idiot driver coming up behind you, or, you know, there could be any number of things where I had a swarm of bees once. So Cooper and I were quite casually walking down the road. I was on a loose rein and we walked past, unbeknownst to me, I didn't know about it. I shortly did walk past a fence post, and it was actually covered by a swarm of bees. And so quite quickly, they are very protective of their swarm or whatever. They all sort of started flying around, and I kind of went, oh my God, we're being surrounded by bees. So I literally just kicked Cooper as I was gathering the rein and expected him to gallop down the road. And thankfully I was on Cooper, and thankfully he can cope with that sense of urgency. And instead of reacting to me, and instead of bucking or bolting, even though I wanted him to gallop, but instead of him reacting negatively to that situation, he kind of went, okay, there must be a reason for this, we need to move. And then I kind of got out of the swarm of bees and calmed him down and worked in that way. So that's another example. You never know when you're out and about. You might be at a competition and a swarm of bees could be there. You just never know what is potentially going to happen and why you might need to develop, or it's too late once you're in a situation. So prior to you being in a situation is when you may need to develop, or when I would recommend that you develop a sense of urgency in your horses, and you teach the horse how to cope with pressure, both on the ground and under saddle. And I would certainly start on the ground. But we need to teach our horses that, you know, sometimes my cues aren't going to be fantastic. Sometimes I might feel, or you might feel like I'm, you know, booting you up the sides or something like that. Sorry, I'm just turning my heater down. I turned my heater right on because it was really cold when I got here, and now I'm cooking. You know, you need to teach your horse now in a quiet environment to deal with that sense of urgency, that rapid application of cues, that really, sometimes surprising set of cues that you may apply to the horse, and teach him not to react to it other than what you're asking him to do. So as I said, you know, when I had that swarm of bees come at Cooper and I was on a loose rein. I didn't even think about getting the rein first. I literally, both legs came off the horse and I just kicked him and said, go. And as we were I was doing that, I was gathering the rein at the same time. And I was very grateful that Cooper responded accordingly to that, you know, unfair, very surprising kick up the ribs that I gave him. And, which was partially my adrenaline had kicked through the roof. And this is what I'm saying about teaching your horse to respond to both good and poor cues, because when our adrenaline gets spiked, we are going to be clumsy, we're going to be inaccurate, and we're potentially going to be a lot harder than we would normally be with our horses. So Cooper he does halt to canter transitions, and he probably would have if I had just applied a really light cue and gone, like that, he probably would have just loped off or cantered off down the road. But my adrenaline at thinking, oh my goodness, I'm surrounded by a swarm of bees and I really don't want to be stung by 20 bees at one time, or 50, or however many there were, my adrenaline kicked in and I went into immediate, like, run, we need to get out of here. And I turned into a 15-year-old kid at a barrel race, and my legs came off him and I went boot. And as I booted him, I grabbed up the rein and you know, directed him down the road and pulled him up when I knew that we were clear of the bees. So, you know, we certainly... in training and in horsemanship, we definitely have the horse's best interests in mind, and I want to be as light and as wonderful and as communicative and as clear as I possibly can be most of the time with my horse, but I definitely want my horse to be able to cope if I am reactive, if I do for some reason get my own adrenaline rush and say, hey, we got to get out of here right now. I had another situation where I had a little mare that I was riding, actually in the same place, which is really quite funny, and something happened behind her. I can't remember what it was. It's kind of a curve in the road as well, so something had happened behind her and she jumped forward in the air, and again I was on quite a loose rein, and as she jumped forward, I kind of came out of the saddle and I didn't land behind the saddle, but I hit the back of the saddle, and thankfully when I was leaving the saddle, I did have the rein in my hand, and so as I flew backwards, my hand shortened the rein because she was jumping forwards, and as soon as she hit that rein, she stopped and started backing up straight away, even though she was frightened by something and she was actually trying to spook and get away. And that's exactly what I would have expected her and hoped that she would do, because she could have been spooking into the path of a car. It was a road, and it is quite a busy road. There wasn't a car coming, but that's not the point. You can't expect your horse to spook and make an assessment that, oh, there's a car coming, so I better not shy. Oh, no, there's no car coming, so I'm fine to spook into the middle of the road. And it was just a knee-jerk reaction again on my part, where the horse jumped and I kind of just grabbed the rein and pulled back at the same time, knowing that I had to stop this horse, irrespective of whether I was going to hit the deck or land behind the saddle or get back into the saddle, which I ended up hitting the back of the saddle and then landing back on her back, which was frightfully uncomfortable for her, no doubt, but thankfully, because she knows how to deal with pressure and she knows how to deal with that reactive situation, even though she wasn't happy about it, and I'm not saying you can get your horse happy with it, but what I am saying is that you can get your horse to tolerate those situations so you're able to, you know, regather yourself and control the situation, and get back to a point of safety. And then, you know, go from there and get yourself safe and reestablish, you know, a nice loose rein or you know, a nice leg aid or something like that. So that's the what and that's the why. The how, for me personally, the how begins on the ground. And what I'm going to start doing with my horses is, in addition to all the usual training that I do, so I do the online training on the ground and I do the ground skills training on the ground and things like that, there's two things that I like to do to prepare my horse for both the sense of urgency and the idea of responding to a cue that may not be crystal clear or may not be as succinct as I want it to be. What I'm going to start to do with my horse is, firstly, I'm going to start to be a little bit clumsy. So once I've taught my horse how to do, you know, a hindquarter yield or a forequarter yield or sideways or circle or do whatever, every now and then I'm actually going to deliberately apply those cues very clumsily, or I'm going to touch him not in exactly the right space or something like that. So my horse learns to think, you know, she doesn't normally do a hindquarter yield like that, but that's the closest thing to it, so I'm going to go ahead and do a hindquarter yield. or you know, whatever it is, a 4/4 yield, or asking my horse to go around me in a circle, of course, a lot of the time, and probably 85% of the time, I'm going to be as clear and as direct as I possibly can. So I'm setting the horse up for success, and we're communicating in a really good way. But then 20% of the time, I'm going to try and be a little bit clumsy. And sometimes I'm going to be a little bit urgent about the situation. So clumsiness and urgency, I teach separately. And then you might start to apply them at the same time in a reactive kind of a way, just to teach the horse, yes, you know, if I, you know, lift up my hand and jump and kind of, you know, yell or something like that, you are supposed to lunge in a circle, or you are supposed to move your hindquarter, or whatever it is that you're asking him to do. And I don't want to scare the horse, but what I don't want to do is if I ever find myself in a reactive situation or an emergency situation, that would be the worst possible time for my horse to feel clumsiness or surprise, or me being harder in my aids than I normally would be, because that's possibly when the horse is going to react. So if my horse can't handle me, you know, asking for a lateral bend and then spanking him on the bum to get him to move his hindquarter out of the way, the day when I spank him on the bum to say, hey, I don't want you to back over this cliff behind me, quite potentially he's going to start kicking up at my hand, or he's going to run backwards even further because he's going to say, hey, you never spanked me. How dare you spank me? You know, whereas if you've got your horse where you can kind of walk down beside him and give him a little spank, and he goes, oh, okay, I don't know why you spanked me, but I'm going to move forward off the spank or do a hindquarter yield or whatever it is that you're asking him to do, then your horse gets to learn to sort of go, you know what, that was a bit weird, but I don't have to enter into it. I'm just going to go ahead and do some kind of maneuver that I think is warranted in terms of where she spanked me or, you know, moved me or something like that. And we need to apply these things with the hand. So in the rein aids, both on the ground, in the halter to start with, and in the legs. So, you know, anywhere sort of from the girth line all the way to the hindquarter, I want my horse to understand that, you know, if I kind of touch him up on the ribs, he should move away from my hand. If I spank him, he should walk forward. If I do anything like that, what I want him thinking is, oh, I wonder what it is I should be doing right now. And I want him to try and think and interpret that instead of him reacting to it and going, oh, that was really unfair. I'm going to kick out at you, or I'm going to bite you, or I'm going to do something reactive to try and get you to stop doing that, instead of thinking, you know what, that was unfair, but okay, I'm gonna go ahead and do it. So one of the examples that I want to talk about is when I took my dog to puppy school, one of the things that the puppy instructor always teaches is the word stop. And so when she teaches the word stop, what she expects the dog to do is drop immediately wherever it is. And quite a few people told stories about, oh, you know, yes, I've used that with my dog. And typically it's when the dog, you know, sees another dog and goes to run across the road, or the ball goes running across the road or something like that. The owner yells at the top of their lungs, stop! And the dog knows, yeah, 110% of the time when I hear that word, irrespective of what's going on, boom, I'm going to drop to my stomach, I'm going to lay here and I'm going to wait for my owner to come. So I guess it's that kind of situation that we're trying to promote in our horses. But because we're riding our horses, and sometimes the urgency could be running into my hand, as in brakes, or it could be me kicking them forward and saying, hey, you need to move away from that. I might be spanking them and saying to move forward. You know, I could be kicking them to go sideways. Maybe I can see that there's barbed wire or something next to me and the horse hasn't seen it, and I might, you know, apply that leg really rapidly and say, hey, get off that leg, or something like that. You know, I think the horse needs to understand that, what he needs to do is think instead of react and push against the leg. So what's Simon saying? I don't think urgency needs to be clumsy. I think you can be precise and urgent all at the same time. Yeah, I absolutely agree, Simon. And you probably didn't hear the start of what I was saying in this live, which was sometimes we're going to be very precise in our sense of urgency, and sometimes we're going to be like the human is going to be, you know, this is happening here, so I'm going to go ahead and apply this aid, and I expect the horse to be responsive. And that's one level of urgency that we want to develop in our horses, is a responsiveness to the aids when they're applied correctly. But the other sense of urgency is potentially when we are being reactive to something. So one of the examples that I used was, you know, probably about 12 months ago, I was riding down the road. I was on a loose rein and I rode past a fence post that was covered in bees, which I didn't know that there was a swarm of bees on this fence post. And all of a sudden, myself and my horse were surrounded by a swarm of bees. And so whilst I would love to have been cool, calm and collected and been able to rapidly apply a precise and immaculate aid to my horse to tell him to gallop down the road, I have to say that my adrenaline was through the roof and I was panicking, and all I could think of was getting out of there. So I turned into a, you know, 15-year-old kid that was kicking their horse up the guts and saying, you need to get out of here right now. So I want my horse to both be able to respond, even if they think that I'm being clumsy and I may not be being perfectly accurate. And I also want my horse to respond when I am being clear and accurate. So I think it's really important to expose the horse to both of those things in case we are exposed to a sense of urgency that is unexpected on both of our parts. You know, often the urgency can be unexpected on the horse's part, but the human can see it coming, you know, and we're kind of ready for it, ready. Yep, we need to go right now. But sometimes you're in an urgent situation that there's an external influence and you're just going to react, you know, you're going to react in that way when your adrenaline and everything goes up through the roof. So as I was saying, definitely start to teach your horse this on the ground. And I start to teach it at the halt, at the walk, then the trot, and then the canter. And then even in the canter, I might have the horse cantering around me on the lunge, and I might just you know, feel in that lead rope and go ahead and pull their head into the center of the circle. You know, that's not the way I would ask the horse to stop. It's not something that is biomechanically correct or anything like that, but it is something that's going to help my horse go, I'm loping, whoa, she's taken my head for a reason. I'm not going to do it every single time. I'm not going to develop a habit out of it. But as I said, what I want my horse to do in that situation is go canter, okay, for some reason she's pulling my head this way, not canter, oh my God, what's she doing? I'm going to rear up now. Oh my God, what's she doing? I'm going to duck my head and bolt away from me now. So it's about slowly introducing to your horse that sense of, and I don't want to do it so much that my horse develops an anxiety and starts cantering around thinking, oh goodness, is she going to grab my head? But I want to find that balance in my horse of, okay, I understand that I'll follow the halter if that happens, or, you know, as I said, move forward off a spank or move forward off a leg. So what I want to do is create on the ground the responsiveness to the hand and the leg, and then I will redo all of it again at you know, under saddle. So at the halt, at the walk, at the trot, at the canter. You know, I really like doing a one rein stop because I feel like that's something that we're developing in our horses that is going to be beneficial to us. And it's kind of got quite a number of elements of a sense of urgency. So, you know, the one rein stop, we're sort of taking the face, if you like. We're taking the rein, taking the hand, getting the horse to respond to the hand, whatever words you want to use. And then we're also applying that sort of inside leg where we're kicking the hips out of the way. So the horse is learning to follow the hand, and then they're learning to respond to the leg without being reactive, without bracing into it, keeping something, you know, keeping it nice and smooth, and just simply acting as best they can and responding as best they can to that hand and that leg being applied. So that's a really simple one to do, is that one rein stop. And then there's a lot of different, exercises that you can do. Another really fun one that you can do is what we call a go to woe and a woe to go. So that's teaching my horse, if I kind of gather up the rein and I apply the leg and I apply the cue, so I want my horse to canter or gallop off the spot. It's a little bit different. Go to woe is a little bit different to, say teaching my horse a lovely halt to canter depart, because a halt to canter depart, I'm going to set it up really easily for him. I'm going to gather him up. I'm going to make sure he's balanced. I'm going to basically prepare him and say, hey, we're about to do this. Hey, we're about to do this. Hey, we're about to do this. And then I'm going to apply the aids and the horse is going to go, yep, I saw this coming from a mile away. Whereas a woe to go is a little bit more surprising, and it's a little bit like, okay, we've got to go now. And then I'll pick a point in the paddock. It might be a marker, it might be a barrel, it might be something where I'll say, okay, brakes on, we need to stop right here, right now. And that's a really fun, and motivating and interesting way to build that responsiveness in our horses. I talk a lot about, either the go. Generally, your sense of urgency is going to be move now, you need to go forward, or it's going to be stop now, you need to stop. But you will eventually build in a sense of, get off this leg, we need to move sideways, or get off that leg, we need to move sideways. It's probably not as applicable as forward and backward or forward and stop. And then the other one that you want to apply is a backup. I want my horse to be able to back as quickly as possible. And, you can do it with style. You can have wonderful responsive horses that are backing very swiftly and all that sort of stuff. But my horse has to learn to do it under pressure. He has to learn to do it with that adrenaline spike as well, because sometimes there may be an adrenaline spike from the rider. Sometimes there may be an external adrenaline spike. So, there's so many examples, and I'm sure you guys could give me like a million examples or scenarios that you've been in. One time we were out on the trail and we could hear motorbikes coming towards us. So we had kind of all stopped and faced our horses towards the motorbikes. So, they could see them coming and they were all fine. And then instead of just going past us, the motorbikes decided to come straight to us, do a big burnout, spray us with gravel, and then take off back down the way that they'd come. So the horses obviously were quite worried by that, and when we started getting sprayed with gravel, we were kind of backing our horses out of there and saying, we need to get out of this, and we wanted to turn them away and things like that. So that was an adrenal situation, not only for the horses but for us as well, because obviously that's quite dangerous situation. So you never know the scenario that you're going to end up in. And I think it's very, very wise to expose your horse to the possibility of pressure and urgency well before it happens, when you're in a safe, quiet environment, because then you can bring it on nice and slowly, and you can teach your horse to respond in I suppose, the best conditions that you possibly can. And then when you do have to apply it in a scary, high pressure situation, you've got a lot higher chance of it being successful, and you've got a lot higher chance of the horse responding accordingly, and both you and your horse coming out of it successfully, both safely at the other end. What's mum saying? Panic proofing. I love that. That's an awesome word for it. Absolutely. Teaching my horse to be panic proof. So even when their adrenaline spikes up, my horse looks at me and goes, what do we do? And it's a really good situation for us to teach us in as well, because, we are often riding in really quiet, really safe situations. And, even though we might have done a one rein stop 10 times at training, well, 10 times isn't enough if you haven't done it hundreds of times at the walk, hundreds of times at the trot, hundreds of times at the canter. So you are also trained to do that one rein stop and not grab on both reins, or you're trained to, ask the horse to go forward or whatever it is. So I really like that concept. That's a really good way of putting it, panic proofing. So, you know, they're my concepts on a sense of urgency with the horses. What's Karen saying? So you practice it at home before you need it. That's exactly what I'm saying. So there's a concept that I teach at clinics all the time, which is the concept of slowly increasing our horses' adrenaline and pressure and teaching them to be able to think through that. And one of the analogies I use for that is, for example, being trained to be in the SWAT team or in the drug squad at the police academy. Well, when you're first learning how to load and unload a weapon, you know, they sit you in a classroom and they teach you all the safety features and they teach you where the safety is and they teach you quietly and slowly in a low pressure situation how to load and unload that weapon and check that that weapon is safe. And then as they want to condition you to be able to load and unload that weapon under stress, you know, the next day they might say to you, or once you've done it 1,000 times, they might say to you, hey, you know, run 200 meters down the road and run 200 meters back. And then while your heart rate's up and your breathing's increased, then load and unload your weapon. And they might do that for a week. And then the next week they might put your weapon in a building that is, you know, maybe they make it dark inside. And so they say, run into that dark building, unload and reload your weapon. And then the next week they might add to the darkness in that building an overwhelming noise. So they might put sirens in there or gunfire in there or a combination of both or loud music or whatever. And they say, okay, now that your senses, you know, your auditory senses are being challenged, run into that building and load and unload your weapon. And then the next week they might fill that same building with smoke. So you've got darkness, you've got smoke, you know, your sense of smell is being challenged, your auditory senses are being challenged, your visual senses being challenged. Go and unload and load your weapon. And then the next week they might make you, they might challenge you to start making decisions within that building. So you might have to decide if a target's a good guy or a bad guy and shoot them. So now you have to have all those sensory challenges and your heart rate's got to be up, and then you've got to make a decision as to whether shoot that guy or not shoot that guy, and so on and so forth. And slowly, week by week by week, they condition you to be able to make conscious, smart decisions while you're being overwhelmed in your senses and while your heart rate's up and while your body's saying, oh my God, you know, we need air, we need, you know, we should be getting out of here, my adrenaline's pumping, etc., etc., etc. Well, that's the kind of thing that we want to do with our horses. We want to slowly teach them a one rein stop in a nice, quiet, calm environment. And then eventually I want to be able to challenge my horse, you know, out on the showground. There's loudspeakers going, there's music going. I want to be able to put my horse into a gallop, and then I want to say one rein stop and make sure that he's able to respond to that. But would I do that on a horse that's had 5 rides? Probably not, because he's not going to be able to think through all of the compounds of the stresses that are being put on him. So if we slowly increase the pressures and our horse's conditioning and ability to respond in times of stress, then we're going to build a partner that is able to make decisions and not react, but act to what our cues are. So I hope that helps in regards to understanding a little more how we can make our horses a little bit safer, how we can make our horses a little bit able to respond in times of danger and maybe get us out of danger. And please share with me any scenarios that you've been in that you are thinking of, or something that you've experienced with your horse. Feel free to put it in the comments. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it. Thank you to my person who sent in the topic. I really appreciate it. You know, I love hearing your guys' topics. Don't be shy. Send them via private message. I'm happy to keep you anonymous. That's not a problem at all. I never say the name unless someone says to me, hey, I'm really happy for you to say that I've, you know, given you this topic or whatever. You know, I just love receiving the topics and having something to talk about with you guys. So thank you for joining me on this Wednesday night live. I'm sorry I was a little bit late, and I hope you're all having a great week with your horses, and I will talk to you all soon. So good night.